I'll start the story already. Once a year my town hosts a carnival, and for a moment I used to work there. For the people around here, it's a pretty big deal. Fair games, carousels, hall of mirrors, those rides that make you want to puke, and the coolest thing was the haunted house. That's actually where I worked at. It's actually a pretty nice structure. It was a Monday afternoon, and we were preparing to open at night, when suddenly I see this little boy out of nowhere, literally, just looking at me with a stripped shirt and shorts. At first, I didn't give it too much attention, Just a lil dude. I looked at another direction, and when I turned my head back, I see the curtains of the haunted house moving, and immediately thought the boy went inside there. So there I went. I walked into the haunted house, feeling the musty smell with the dim lighting. The place was always a little eerie, even when it wasn't in full swing. My footsteps echoed on the wooden floor as I moved deeper inside, trying to catch sight of the boy. The flickering lights barely illuminated the path ahead, making the already creepy atmosphere even more unsettling. I called out, "Hey kid, you're not supposed to be in here alone." But my voice didn't seem to go far. I reached the first corner, where a life-size skeleton usually popped out at unsuspecting guests, but it remained still, as if it too was waiting for something. I paused, listening intently. The silence was unnerving. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was like the entire place was holding its breath. I shook it off, convincing myself that the kid was probably just playing, hiding, trying to scare me as a prank. I continued down the hallway, passing by the grotesque paintings and dusty cobwebs that adorned the walls. The deeper I went, the colder it got. I didn't remember it ever being this cold inside. But then again, I'd never been there alone like this. My breath started to form small clouds in front of me, and I could feel a chill settling into my bones. At the next corner, I heard a faint giggle. It was high-pitched, almost like the sound of a child playing hide and seek. I followed the sound, turning left into the room where we had a mechanical ghoul that jumped out of a coffin. The giggle grew louder as I entered, but there was no one in sight. The ghoul remained dormant, but the coffin lid was slightly ajar, as if someone or something had been inside. I moved closer to the coffin with my heart pounding. The giggle had stopped, replaced by a deafening silence. As I reached out to push the lid open, I hesitated. Something felt wrong, deeply wrong. But I couldn't just leave, not without making sure the boy was okay. With a deep breath, I shoved the lid fully open. The coffin was empty, save for some old, decaying fabric that had been used to line the interior. But there was something else. A small, worn-out teddy bear lying in the corner. It looked ancient, with one eye missing and a tear down its side. I picked it up, examining it under the dim light. How did this get here? I thought to myself. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered and then went out completely. My heart began to race as I fumbled for my phone, using the flashlight to find my way back to the entrance. As the beam of light swept across the room, I saw a shadow dart past in the corner of my eye. But it was quick, like almost too quick to be human. I just stood there, frozen and looking at the spot. "Hey, who's there?" I called out, but there was no response. My instincts screamed at me to get out, but I couldn't leave that kid behind, even if my gut told me that something was terribly wrong. I retraced my steps, heading back towards the entrance, but it felt like the corridors were shifting, like the house itself was trying to keep me inside. Dude, somehow the path I thought I knew so well seemed kind of foreign, twisted in a way that didn't make sense. Panic started to set in. I turned another corner and froze again. The little boy was standing at the end of the hallway with his back to me. His striped shirt was unmistakable, but something about his posture was off. He stood too still, too rigid. "Hey, buddy, are you okay?" I called out, taking a cautious step forward. He didn't respond or move, just stood there unnaturally still. I felt a chill run down my spine, but I couldn't leave without making sure he was all right. I took another step forward, and that's when he slowly turned around. Man, his face was completely different from before. It was blank, expressionless. But his eyes, though, those were what made my blood run cold. They were completely black, like it didn't have any light or life. He just stared at me, unblinking, as if peering into my very soul. My mouth went dry, and for a moment, I couldn't move or speak. Who are you? I finally managed to stammer out, but he remained silent. Then, without warning, he took a step towards me. His movements were jerky and unnatural. It was like something pretending to be human. It was awful. Fear surged through me, and I took a step back, then another, until I was almost running down the hallway, trying to get away from whatever the hell that was. When I turned to get away, I heard the boy's footsteps echoing behind me, but when I glanced over my shoulder, there was no one there. Yet I could still feel his presence, like a shadow lingering just out of sight. Finally, I burst through the exit door, gasping for breath. The cold late afternoon air hit me like a slap back to reality, but it did nothing to calm my mind. I looked around, expecting to see the boy following me out, but there was nothing, just the empty carnival grounds. I stood there for a moment, trying to steady my breathing and make sense of what had just happened. I glanced around the carnival grounds, expecting at any moment to see the boy emerge, but everything was eerily still. The sounds of the carnival that usually filled the air were absent. It was as if the world had paused, waiting for something else to happen. I forced myself to walk away from the haunted house a little. Each step felt like it was taking forever, but eventually, I reached the main thoroughfare of the carnival. A few people had started to trickle in for the evening, their laughter and chatter bringing a sense of normalcy back to the night. I needed to tell someone about what I saw, but who would believe me? It sounded insane even to me. A boy with black eyes in a haunted house? Yeah, right, it was like something from a horror movie. I decided to go to my supervisor. If anyone would know what to do, it would be him. I found him standing by the ticket booth, and I hesitated for a moment, then finally blurted out, "I could swear there was a kid in the haunted house, man, but I couldn't find him." He gave me a concerned look. "Really? A kid? Can you tell me what he was wearing?" I didn't know why he asked me that, but I told him the boy had a stripped shirt and jeans shorts. "Why?" I asked him. He said, "Well, man, before you started to work here, we actually had a few employees, like 3, commenting something about seeing a ghostly boy with a stripped shirt walking around." "Yeah, wait, what?" I said. "Yeah, man, that's actually not a first. After a few months, I quit my job there to look for something different, and not to see ghost kids walking around a silent haunted house with nobody else around. Who taught a carnival haunted house could be actually haunted for real?" I was a kid in 7th grade, school was on vacation season, and me and my friends knew about a new carnival that had opened in town. So we took a Saturday to go and have a good time. We got there at 4:30 p.m. What we were more excited for was the fortune teller's tent, because we heard a friend talking about how he had a raise with his luck after the fortune teller told him that he would in fact become more lucky. We played some fair games and went on the rides before leaving the main stuff for last. When we went to the fortune teller's tent, it was like 6-something p.m. We got in, there was only the light of a single lamp and the smell of incense, and there was this older dude sitting on a table with long white hair and a long white beard. He had an all-black robe and some chains with a few weird symbols that I've never seen. When we got there, he said, "Hey, you with the gray hoodie, I've been waiting for you." He said that to me and we got confused as hell. He told me to come to the table alone at first. I hesitated, but my friends nudged me forward laughing. So I walked toward the table with my heart thumping in my chest. The man's eyes, dark and intense, seemed to pierce right through me as I approached. He motioned for me to sit, and I did, feeling uneasy, because he looked like he had a look of concern in his face. He leaned in closer with his long beard almost brushing the table and whispered, "You have a path before you, young one, a dangerous path, but you must walk it alone." His voice was low and gravelly, sending chills down my spine. I glanced back at my friends, who were watching from the entrance of the tent. They looked as nervous as I felt, but I couldn't back out now. The fortune teller reached across the table, grabbed my hand, and closed his eyes. For a moment, he was completely still, as if he was in a trance. Then, suddenly, his eyes snapped open, and he let go of my hand like it had burned him. "You must leave," he said urgently with his voice even rising a bit. "Get out of this place and don't come back tonight. Bad things will happen if you stay." Man, I was stunned by the sudden change in his demeanor. Before I could ask him what he meant, he waved me away, dismissing me with a frantic gesture. I stood up, feeling a mix of confusion and fear. My friends immediately crowded around me with concerned eyes, as confused as me. "What do we do?" Now I got scared, one of them said. "I don't know, dude. Maybe we should really just leave. We definitely weren't expecting nothing like this. We eventually just left. It wasn't the end of the world anyways, you know?" We made our way out of the tent, with the bright lights of the carnival flashing around us, the sounds of laughter and music filling the air. But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. As we headed towards the exit, I noticed that the sun had set, and the carnival had taken on a more eerie atmosphere. The once cheerful sounds now felt kinda sinister. My friends all joked and laughed, like good friends trying to lift the mood, but I couldn't completely join in. Something felt wrong, very wrong. And just as we were about to leave, I heard a voice behind me, a very clear, low whisper that sent me shivers. "You shouldn't have ignored the warning." I spun around instantly, but there was no one there, just a group of kids running by. My heart raced and I felt my stomach drop. My friends saw it, but they didn't hear the voice. At first they thought I was just spooked by the fortune teller. But no, man, this was different. This felt real. As we made our way out of the carnival grounds, I kept glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see something behind us. But the path behind us was empty. Just as we reached the parking lot, the lights of the carnival suddenly flickered and then went out completely, plunging everything into darkness for like 3 minutes. We cursed, fumbling for our phones to use as flashlights. The laughter and music stopped abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Then, out of the darkness, we all heard the fortune teller's voice again. But this time, it wasn't a whisper. It was loud, clear, and echoing. "You have been warned." Panic surged through us. We all scrambled inside the car with our breaths coming in quick gasps. "Let's get out of here, man." My friend turned the key in the ignition, but you guess it, the car wouldn't start. He tried again, but it just sputtered and died. "Nah, no fucking way, man," I said with my voice shaking. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, and the fear that had been upon at just me all evening was now our full-blown terror. Finally, the engine roared to life, and we sped out of the parking lot, leaving the dark, silent carnival behind. It was scary as fuck, but we didn't let this ruin our whole day, 'cause it was a fun day after all. But nothing could have prepared me for what was coming next. When we pulled up to my house, my friends tried to laugh it off, saying that the fortune teller had just freaked us out for fun, and we laughed a bit. But when I got in my house, I found my parents and my brother super concerned with something. I asked what was going on, and they said that somebody had broken into our house before they all came back. There was broken glass from the front window, broken furniture, and literally the word hell written with what looked like a Sharpie on the wall of the living room. They took our TV and other things. Luckily, they got the guy and arrested him a few days after that. And after he got arrested, I told them the story about what the fortune teller had said to me. Me, my family, and my friends are still speechless to this day. I'm gonna tell you the scariest experience I've ever had in my life. It took place in 2015, when I was 18 years old. There was a carnival near my town at the time, so I took a Saturday to go there with one of my good friends, Daniel. We got there and played some games, then we ate some hot dogs. It was then that one of the guys who was there selling food in a food stand said something creepy as hell to us. "Hey, you guys, you don't look like you can defend yourselves." Huh? Dude, we didn't know what the hell to say. Who says this out of nowhere to some kids? You know? Daniel got kinda pissed and told the guy, "Well, if you fuck around, you can certainly find out." I let out a laugh. It was funny, man. The guy selling food just stared at us. A blank stare, before he finally cracked a smile. It was the kind of smile that you expect from psychopaths, and it made my skin crawl a bit. He turned back to the grill, flipped a few burgers, and I tried to shake off the weird vibe. "Let's go, we gotta go in that ride, man," I said to Daniel as we made our way to the rides. We spent the next hour or so having a blast on the roller coasters, playing more games, and generally goofing off. The strange encounter with the food vendor started to fade from our minds, replaced with the adrenaline. But then, as we were standing in line for the Ferris wheel, I noticed something odd. The guy from the food stand was standing near the ticket booth, just staring at us. I elbowed Daniel and nodded in the guy's direction. "Hey, isn't that the same dude from before?" I whispered. Daniel looked over and his expression darkened. "Yeah, man, that's him. What the hell is he doing?" We both watched as the guy slowly turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. We brushed it off, thinking it was just a coincidence. But a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach, and the Ferris wheel ride did little to calm my nerves. As we reached the top, I looked out over the carnival, the bright lights and happy screams of other kids filling the air. For a moment, everything felt normal again, like maybe we were just paranoid. But as we were getting off the ride, I saw him again. This time, he was standing near the exit, watching us with that same creepy-ass smile. Daniel noticed him too, and I could tell he was just as freaked out as I was. "Let's get out of here," I suggested, and we made our way toward the parking lot. As we were walking, we started to realize that the crowd had thinned out. It was getting late, and most families had already gone home. The once bustling carnival was now eerily quiet, with only a few stragglers hanging around. We quickened our pace, eager to get to the car and leave this weirdo behind us. But just as we reached the edge of the parking lot, we heard footsteps behind us. And as we turned around, there he was again, standing a few yards away. He wasn't smiling anymore. His face was blank, almost emotionless. And in his hand he was holding a long, thin object that I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Daniel grabbed my arm. "Run," he whispered, and we both took off, sprinting toward his car. I could hear the guy's footsteps behind us, quickening as he started to chase us. When we reached the car, Daniel fumbled with the keys, 'cause his hands were shaking a lot. The footsteps were getting closer. "Hurry!" I yelled, my voice breaking with fear. Finally, he managed to unlock the car, and we both jumped in, slamming the doors. As the car roared to life, I looked out the window. The guy was standing just a few feet away, that same blank expression on his face. But now I could see what he was holding, a long, rusty knife. He raised it, pointing it directly at us, and we heard him saying, "I want to find out if you boys can really protect yourselves." A cold wave of terror washed over us. "Go! Go!" I screamed, and Daniel floored the gas pedal, screaming a loud "fuck you" to the guy. The tires screeched as we sped out of the parking lot, and the man disappeared into the darkness behind us. We drove in shock for a few minutes, both of us scared as we never had been before. My hands were shaking too, and I kept looking out the back window to see if he was somehow chasing us with a car or something. But the road was empty. Daniel broke the silence. "Okay, bro, what the hell just happened?" "Shit, man, I don't know," I replied with a trembling voice. We didn't stop driving until we reached the safety of Daniel's house. I was staying the night there. Once inside, we locked all the doors and windows, still paranoid that the guy might somehow find us. We spent the rest of the night in his room, too scared to sleep, just waiting for the sun to come up. The next morning, everything seemed different. The daylight brought a sense of safety, and the events of the night before felt almost unreal. But as we talked about it, we both knew it wasn't just our imagination. We had no idea who that guy was or what he wanted, but we were certain of one thing: we were lucky to have gotten away. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking about that night more and more. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, somewhere, maybe even watching for us. But then the story took an even more terrifying turn. A friend of ours asked us if we had seen the news of that very carnival we were at that day. He said one guy tried to stab a person and he got arrested. Damn, we felt the heaviest chills of our lives. And it was indeed that creep who talked to us. I think he's still locked up to this day. But as time passed, the fear started to fade, replaced by a sense of relief that we had escaped unharmed. Of course, we never went back to that carnival, and we haven't also been to one since. It's sad that the world has some creep like those, lurking at places that a lot of kids and families go to.